Good evening, everyone. This is A.L. Johnson with A.L. Johnson Life Insurance Agency, and welcome to our bankability conversation where we'll be talking about how you can raise funds for your business. And so, to join me in this conversation, I have a very esteemed panel. You want to make sure that you grab your notes and your notepads, get your drinks and your popcorn, because this is going to be a ton of very, very important information. As we know, that one of the biggest challenges that Black businesses face is funding. The ability to scale and grow and hire employees. And so to address that, we have Miss Vachon Harper-Young of BMO Bank. How are you doing this evening, Miss Young? Miss Young, if you could just wave to the audience, let them know who you are. Appreciate it.
Hi, good afternoon. Vachon Harper-Young. I'm a regional sales manager for BMO Bank. Happy to be with you this afternoon. Sorry for the interruptions in my internet. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that we stay connected this afternoon. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you. Also, we have Dr. Donnetta Watson of the Black Mastermind Group. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, AL, for having us here tonight. It's an honor to speak to your audience.
Thank you so much. Then we have State Representative Mike Johnson, District 23, Kansas City. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, AL. How are you doing, sir? Thank you for having me.
Doing well, doing well. Thank you all for coming through. For those of you that are just tuning in, this is live. And so if you have any questions as it relates to business funding, make sure that you drop that in the comment section and we'll be sure to address that. And so let's just get right into it. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Watson. I'm going to start with you. You've got a wealth of information as it relates to Black businesses and how they grow, how they scale, what the challenges and hurdles are in getting started. And so can you just give us first a little bit of background about, what you used to do in banking and how you transitioned into helping businesses become bankable?
Absolutely. Well, it goes even before that. I've been an entrepreneur, educator, adjunct professor, and administrator of a business school, Joseph Business School from Chicago, Illinois. So I've been working with entrepreneurs for about 18 years prior to becoming a full-time entrepreneur myself. And my journey wasn't very pretty. And came to the end of my journey and had went through over $350,000 of my own money running a business. And then to find out from my bank that if I had not used my own cash, they would have been able to provide me with capital. But because I bootstrapped my own business by using my own cash, it made me non-bankable. And at that time, I didn't understand how that could be. Think that they would have been excited that I started the business with my own money and was able to get it up and running. And then when I ran out of money, there was nowhere for me to go to access capital. So my business closed. And one of the things, the blessing that came out of that, I was offered an opportunity to be a manager of a lending group, a branch manager, and open a new facility here in Kansas City. And that was the beginning of my journey of learning why my business failed and why myself, a former government manager, six-figure GS-13 employee, could not access capital for my business. I learned my very first 2 weeks in training that I would have never been able to access capital based on the type of business I ran and how I ran it and what I did with revenue as I was running the business made me a non-fundable entity. And so my 2 years with that organization taught me so much about what we do not know as entrepreneurs about accessing capital, the pathway, the journey, and how to structure our businesses so that we can get a yes, not a maybe, and not a no. So on this journey of being an entrepreneur, educator, coach, mentor, advisor, I decided that I needed to start providing our community with that level of information because 87% of Black entrepreneurs have never accessed capital. Pre-COVID, there was 2.4 to 2.7 million Black businesses pre-COVID. We lost 42% of those. That's over a million. 1,100,000 businesses closed in 3 months, 90 days of COVID. What I learned from all of this is that it is what we structure and how we structure businesses that have put us in a vulnerable state. We are not to run businesses on cash. Our community predominantly runs our businesses on revenues. We bootstrap all the way through until our credit is destroyed, because when the business isn't producing enough revenue, we use our personal credit and we use our personal finances. Then we can't pay the bills, and then our personal credit is damaged. And so therefore, personal and business credit is used to determine qualifications. And if both of those credit files or credit histories or status are destroyed, we become non-fundable. And that's predominantly the story of Black entrepreneurship. And I wanted to make sure that I was able to provide our community with the information, the training, the knowledge, the insight on this whole hidden mystery of accessing capital, to demystify all of the things that are pertaining to this journey of accessing capital, and demystifying the financial documents that are required to access capital. And our community knows very little about cash flow reports and profit margins and projections and running businesses based on margins and cash flow and looking at balance sheets. And we know very little about this side of business. And so I knew it was extremely important for us to teach us the language of business, which is strictly financial, and all of the tools necessary to document where your business is at and where it can go with the right funding and strategies and systems in place. So we created the Entrepreneurial Financial Literacy Bootcamp. We started in 2019, then COVID hit. We kept plowing through virtually in 2020. And consequently, we trained over 197 entrepreneurs. 130 have graduated from our program, 133 to be exact. We've had 14 entrepreneurs qualify for microloans since last year, April. We've had 6 entrepreneurs get bank financing. That's huge for the Black community. 6 Black entrepreneurs get bank funding since April 2022. And we've created 6 millionaires on this journey. We have coached and mentored and trained and stood in the trenches with these entrepreneurs, and their revenues now are over $1 million. And with the history of what we've done and how we've done it, I want to share with you, starting in later part of this year, we will be opening a retail incubator. We already have a service incubator. We're going to open a retail incubator with a food court, a bar and lounge, 10 retail business spots to support our community in launching sustainable, fundable business models. And so we are changing the trajectory of entrepreneurship in Kansas City, Kansas. And we are excited about being part of the solution for our community. We believe that education is the missing link for our community. And once, they often say, once you know better, you do better, but that's not necessarily true. Once you know better and you implement what you know, the knowledge that you gain become extremely powerful. And then you can navigate through all of the choppy waters of accessing capital and creating sustainability and creating a business model that you're no longer a hobby, hookup, or hustle, but you are now positioned to be an employer, to create opportunities for other people. That is what we require of our students. They cannot complete our program in a sole proprietorship business model. They cannot graduate from our program as a single LLC entity operator, which is no different than being a sole proprietor in the legal realm. We require our students to create a business model that is putting Black people to work and providing opportunities for people that look like them. That's a transformation in the educational pathway for entrepreneurship today, because the culture and climate of entrepreneurship is dramatically changing, and technology is going to put us in a position that if we do not change what we are doing by creating hobbies that we're calling businesses, we're creating hustles that we're hustling people with, and we're creating hookups that are not businesses and are not sustainable and are non-fundable. So that is what we do in the Black Mastermind group. We say we're an ecosystem. So we wrap around the entrepreneur with education, with training, with coaches, with mentors after they graduate from our program so that they can access capital, because businesses are to be run on capital and not cash.
Absolutely.
Man, if we can get that
Absolutely.
in the minds of our community, we would see more sustainable, stronger businesses. That business is designed to run on capital, and capital is the only thing for capitalism. And business is a capitalistic endeavor. And you cannot and should not ever run a business on cash.
So Ms. Watson, so you have some experience in the banking industry. I was speaking with one of my friends before we went live, and he's Caucasian, right? And so he said, well, I don't really quite understand why there has to be programs specifically for Black people, right? So can you just touch on, from your experience, what that looks like behind the scenes,
Yes,
and what numbers, encourage banks to create these types of programs?
Well, they create programs, but I'm going to be real honest with you. I want to see a program really work for Black people from a lending institution. What I find is that I call them counterparts, do not understand that we were legislated out of the economic opportunities our company afforded them. And so the white community has had a 400 or more year head start in business than we have. They've had access to capital. They've had all of the tools that we are now fighting for. And so they've had a head start. What they failed to realize is that we're being measured by the same measure from someone who started running a race 400 years earlier than we started running the race. And so, of course, we're not going to measure up to someone who's had 400 years of entrepreneurial opportunities, 400 years of banking, 400 years of accessing capital, 400 years of wealth. We will not measure up. Yes, we have advanced and we've come a long way, but not in entrepreneurship. We've come a long way in opportunities of employment. But we've not come as far in entrepreneurship, because that access to capital is still something they're withholding the right to access based on our narrative. Now, we've had affirmative action, which based on the narrative of education and based on the narrative of employment, we were always locked out of those opportunities. So affirmative action caused industries and employers to give us an opportunity. But the banking industry still has not.
So we got a comment here from Jerisha Roan. She said, hello, how do I get signed up for that? So how can they sign up for the Black Mastermind?
You can go to the businessmasteryinstitute.com and get on our wait list. We are registering students. Our registration actually ends tomorrow. So if you're a serious entrepreneur and you're serious about success and learning the tools and the systems, the process and procedures that govern success, then yes, go to the businessmasteryinstitute.com, get on our wait list. I'll see it come in, schedule yourself for an appointment for tomorrow, and I will get you in the bootcamp class. We still have scholarships. We had 15 scholarships available, $500 scholarships that go toward paying your class fees. We are making sure that we get as many of our students in the seats, get them trained, get them educated, get them coached, provide them with mentorship so that they can create sustainable models and not hobbies, hookups, and hustles.
I love it. I love it. Representative Mike Johnson. So my question is, you actually sat on the Small Business Committee at one point in time. And so are there any initiatives that are going on at the state or even the city level that can help entrepreneurs grow and fund their businesses?
It most definitely is. One of the things, and I always like to, make sure that you have access to this information via email. So one of the things is a bill that has been passed, which will allow for small entrepreneurs and small business owners to grow their business via a sandlot. And inside of that sandlot, they'll have opportunities to once they have created whatever product it is or whatever business that they want to move forward with, we'll make sure that they have an opportunity to have a seat at the table by making sure that their business is credible, and they have an opportunity for funding outside of using their own cash, where they can have access to capital. And what it'll do is, if a business isn't quite ready, then it'll put it back in that sandlot. It won't just get rid of that business, but it'll put it back in that sandlot and allow them to go back in, tweak some things, get everything together, then come back and move forward with their business opportunity. But outside of that, on the state level, you know that I have plenty other not only ideas, but pieces of legislation and also a movement that we need for financial stability throughout our community. And I'll talk to you more about that at the given time.
Now, I know that we've talked about that privately, and I do love the, are you speaking about the small business mentorship program?
Yes, about the small business mentorship programs, the small business adoptions, and also the business showers. We have our baby showers. We have to have our business showers.
Is that program just in Missouri, or is that program in
No,
Kansas?
Well, thank you for asking, Doctor. What we want to do, Dr. Watson, is this is something we want to take across both states, Missouri and Kansas, to where, say, for instance, if a business, doctor, has a mentorship and an adoption from a business that is well seasoned and been in business, then the new business doesn't have to incur the trials and tribulations and overcome the obstacles and hurdles of that new startup, that old business had to go through. So it entails giving them an opportunity to be fast tracked, to make sure that they're guaranteed success in our ecosystem. And one of the main things that we have to have is to be able to maintain our business. Then we'll have an opportunity to sustain our business. So I think that they kind of go hand in hand. And so also with the business showers, even if you have a business that is ready for grand opening and they have all the resources readily available to them, we want to make sure that they have more than enough. So now we can have a sense of sustainability. There's been so many instances where we see businesses open, and it's a business that is needed in our communities and in our urban core. And then we get used to it, and in 6 months it's gone. And that's something that we have to get away from. And you spoke about it, Dr. Watson, and all I was doing was, I was hyped just to hear you speak about it, because it totally makes sense. We can't use our hard-earned cash and think that we're going to be able to have a business that we can sustain when we're not using capital. We watch everybody else in every ethnicity gain through using the capital approach to it to gain businesses that are sustainable. So I think that we have no other choice but to follow suit. If it works for others, we need to make sure that it works for us, not only so that we can have a seat at the table, so that we can become our own table within our own ecosystem.
Absolutely.
That's extremely important. It's important because a lot of times we look at small businesses as being in their own individual silo, and whatever doing for their business doesn't affect the community at large, but it absolutely does. And so one thing that we talked about on the radio show on 1590 last week was the fact that small businesses increase tax revenue in the areas that they do business in. Another issue that we have is the low income problem that we have. 64130, 127, 128, that entire block lives either at or below the poverty line. And so how can we actually address that problem if we don't have businesses in the area that are successful enough and have enough capital to hire people at wages that can raise that base income level, hence raising that tax revenue, and improving our school systems, improving our roads, improving all these different things. Now, I do have a tough question for you, Mike. And, if you can answer this, I'd absolutely love it. If not, I understand. But one thing that we hear about sometimes is we have taxes that are being raised in one area for one purpose. And then we find that money moves to North Kansas City, or it moves to some other area. How does that happen? Is this something in the legislation that we don't understand? How can we stop it? How can we get involved?
Okay, I think that, first of all, great question. What it is it's a responsibility on both parts, the elected official and the constituents and the business owners, to make sure that they work hand in hand, to make sure that they are following these pieces of legislation, to know where they started at, so that we can have a sense of accountability. You can't have one, actually, AL, without having the other one. So what I'm saying is, if we are aware of where it starts at, when there's talk of raising taxes, when we know where the core of it exists, then we can follow it. A lot of times we hear that well, they're trying to raise taxes. And then we want to point a finger and pinpoint. I'm talking about on both sides of the fence. And we point a finger and we don't follow that piece of legislation, or we don't follow where that tax increase actually gave birth and where it started from. And so I think it's the same thing that Dr. Watson said when she said that we have to hold our businesses. We hold their hand. We don't just let them start the business and then we forget about them. We keep mentorship programs. We keep opportunities that are readily available for them. And that's the same thing we have to do when we have these situations that come across, because I'm dealing with it right now when we're talking about tax increases. We have to not only wait until we hear about it and then hear what was said about it and then think that there's a way to fix it. We both hand in hand have to know when they start, and we have to hold each other accountable all the way through the process. It's a 365 wraparound process, 360. You know, we can't do things and then start the process of saying, well, this is where we're at tax-wise, but we don't know where the finish line is. Because a lot of times there's opportunities where if it's something that we don't like, as far as taxation without representation or things of that nature, then we have an opportunity to stop it. But a lot of times we don't have voices until we feel as if though when it's in the fourth quarter and it's almost too late. So I would hold myself accountable to make sure that I'm readily available and have an open door policy for my constituents and business owners, so that we can also make sure that we have that transparency in our conversations to know where these things are headed and not wait until it's the last minute.
I appreciate that. I see you, Dr. Watson.
Yes.
Really quick, for those of you that are just tuning in, we are talking about bankability, how to grow your business through business funding. And we have State Representative Mike Johnson here, Dr. Donnetta Watson of the Black Mastermind Group. I believe she's having a little bit of technical difficulty, but we do have Ms. Vachon.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me though?
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see you. Okay, great.
Okay.
Dr. Watson, you had a comment.
Yes, I did. We are in Kansas, but we train entrepreneurs across the nation. So we have Missouri students, we have Kansas students, we have scholarship commitments from Columbia, Missouri, Atlanta, Georgia, Chattanooga, Tennessee, New Jersey, Oklahoma. So we have students from across the nation. If we find entities that will provide scholarships for the students, we go into that city and start training. But I tell you, the thing we are seeing is consistent across every state. And this access to capital is an issue that's a national epidemic. Mm-hmm. It's not just here in Kansas City. It's not just a Kansas City, Kansas issue. It's not just a Kansas City, Missouri issue. It's a national issue. Yeah. How we start businesses is a national epidemic. And mainly because what we see, what we're exposed to is what we create. And in our community, we've always created side hustles. We glorify that, but side hustles are non-fundable. We create things that are non-fundable because we see everyone in our community operating with cash and running these little business models that taking in cash without reporting or without legal structure. And so we do that and we call that business. What we want to do is really classify what we have so we can show what it is not. What we have in our communities are predominantly micro enterprises. Based on Small Business Administration's definition of a small business, we are not running small businesses. We are running micro enterprises. And once we get micro funding back in place, which was removed about 10 years ago, micro lending for startups, micro lending to position and stabilize a company, and micro lendings to sustain it went out the window. Mm-hmm. When we do not provide that level of funding for the Black community, we can't position entrepreneurs to be able to go into a bank and ask for cash. Our community knows very little about the business credit the pathway, which is the precursor to going into a bank and asking for cash. You must have a business credit profile. You must have a history of paying your bills on time. You must have trade line accounts at the level lenders are expecting to see based on the years you've been in business. We know nothing about Dun & Brad. We know nothing about business credit profiles. We know nothing about trade line accounts. We know nothing about the elementary steps that an entrepreneur is supposed to do when they first start the business. Establish an LLC, a sole proprietor, is an okie doke trick. Do not run a business as a sole proprietor. You need to be an LLC, which gives you access to Dun & Brad and establishing your business as a legal entity that can begin the pathway of opening business credit and establishing a profile by opening trade line accounts at each of the levels. And when you've established 3 years, not 1, not 2, but 3 years of successfully managing your trade line accounts, you can go sit in a bank and ask for cash. But we don't know that that's the last step in the lending process. We go to the bank first. We get denied. We get ashamed and embarrassed, and we never go back again. So we want to get our entrepreneurs properly aligned. So once they've hit year 3, they can then begin to operate in using bank credit cards, line of credit, cash at opportunities, and all the other products that we know nothing about that are out there today for funding entrepreneurial endeavors. We teach the pathway from 0 to 3 years to 10 years or more in business. There is a particular pathway businesses are designed to operate. Our community knows nothing about what lenders are expecting you to know when you tell them you are running a business.
Now we actually have a lender here, so I definitely want to give her the floor for a second. Get ready, Miss Young. There is a comment from the audience I want to make sure that I address. I believe this is directed to you, Representative Johnson. It says that the below the poverty level comment describing a population or consumer base in the Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas area also somewhat identifies an assumed amount of dollars available to consume and support that small business in the area. Are there any city and state level recruiting being considered to increase the financial capacity of the inner city consumer? And so what I believe, to maybe just some clarification on that question, I believe what they're getting at is there any ways we're looking at increasing the income of people in that area so that they can support the small businesses so they can flourish and survive?
We're working on it right now. So I'm sorry, Representative Johnson, but in Kansas City, Kansas, we're working on that. We have to increase the household income opportunities. And so there are initiatives happening right now through technology.
Yes.
For the urban cores across America.
Yeah.
And so I want to say this, and Representative Johnson, you can help me with this. So I had a conversation with the Attorney General's office in Kansas City, in the state of Kansas. And they are aware that moving manufacturing out of the urban cores was the worst thing America could have done.
Oh, yeah.
NAFTA Trade Act was on the surface a good thing for everyone, for business, but it was destructive to the Black urban core communities. So when the NAFTA Trade Acts were initiated, America agreed to reduce its manufacturing, to do global manufacturing. And we made China an economic powerhouse as a result of making it our manufacturing hub for the world. So consequently, we took out of the urban core what made our Black households strong and stable, good paying jobs in manufacturing plants. When they took those away from the urban core, it demised the urban core. So consequently, Congress and our federal government has made the decision they're going to bring manufacturing back to America. They have cut their trade agreements with China. They are looking at what industries they will be bringing back to America. But let me tell you, China is a technology giant. And so they were running business models in cyber technology, in speed of light, their ability to manufacture and distribute. America does not have an infrastructure strong enough to compete with China. And so therefore, there are massive amounts of technology funding coming down the pike solely for disadvantaged communities, distressed communities, and urban core. Why? Because we were left out of the technology platform, and the manufacturing hubs are gone. So our community was left out of technology. So what America is wanting to do is bring technology and manufacturing to the urban cores across America. And there are billions of dollars being released right now in grants to establish technology hubs in the urban core to teach our community how to engage and how to become employable in the technology manufacturing arena that is going to be reestablished in the urban cores across America. What is that going to require us? It's going to require us to become trained and educated, to sit in some classrooms and learn skill sets we don't have. It's going to require us to grow an employee base from the next generation, that within 10 years, the children that we train and we prepare with technology skill sets at the next level can be the leaders, the managers, the workers in the manufacturing hubs that will be placed in the urban cores across America. Black
Dr.
people,
Watson,
we better wake up.
Absolutely. I want to give some time to Mrs. Young. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you just fine, and it's saying that you could see me, but for some reason I don't know why. I moved to another platform that gave me stronger connection, so I'm sorry about the visual effects right now, but this conversation is a well-needed conversation. When you don't know where you've been, it's hard to kind of give direction of how to get somewhere else. So Dr. Watson, I always enjoy coming behind you because of the lesson that you put forth there. BMO, right after the George Floyd incident, BMO decided to take some bold moves and to start taking a look at how do we close the economic gap for Black, Latinx, women in business, and then take a look at some other minorities, Native owned, which we took a look at just recently and said, what can we do? How can we do our part? So we created a special purpose credit program. Special purpose credit programs have been around for a long time. Banks just really never leveraged them. However, we decided to leverage it. And what it is, it allows us to designate certain groups to underwrite differently. And so our application process asks you, are you Black, Latinx, woman-owned business, or Native-owned business, 51% ownership. That allows that application to go through a different underwriting process. Now, the program, we call it Zero Barriers to Business because we are trying to break down those barriers. We don't have all the answers. As a matter of fact, we're heading into the third year of this program, and we're collecting data. And data is what will allow us to make changes and tweaks and things like that to the program that we need to, the data that we didn't have before. And so to date, we have extended $83 million in special purpose credit lending. That's a line of credit and a credit card to over 3,100 businesses. And so we know that the need for the access to capital absolutely was out there. Absolutely, you should be using bank financing to support your business. Absolutely, you should learn how to use capital to fuel your business. So our program is 3 pillars: access to capital, access to free resources that we provide on our Zero Barriers to Business website, and then aligning with partnerships with organizations such as Dr. Watson, in which we're going to dig in a little bit deeper, Dr. Watson, in our collaboration with you. And so with you, AJ, you said I can call you AJ because your mama call you AJ. I'm gonna call you AJ. And our state representatives, we want to collaborate with you all because we still have probably about 60% that still get declined. And the decline is for those very reasons that you spoke of, Dr. Watson, not the preparedness of coming into a bank. I would say that for the most part, prepared people, they already know if they're going to get the financing. They know that they're going to get the financing because they prepared themselves to get the financing. But because of our history in our community, we did not have this table conversation about finance. And when we made the money, we spent the money.
As soon as we got.
And you know, a lot of businesses came up from the South, and we just ran our businesses. We had cash, we put our kids through school, but we didn't understand the language of finance. So what Dr. Watson is doing is invaluable, because that's the third pillar of our program, and we say that it is more important than the capital in some respect. And so the program is in your market area. Applications are taken at our branch locations, and we generally are able to give you a decision right away, because we know that a quick yes and a quick no goes a long way. And so we are happy to, you know, provide educational support where, because we want to make sure that we start to see more applicants get approved because they're ready to come through the process. But we are happy about the 83 million that's out there, that for 3,100 businesses, and we'll continue to partner in our communities that we need to serve better.
And Mrs. Young, we got a question from the audience. It was asked, any trade line accounts you recommend for fairly new businesses?
Yeah, trade line accounts, you can get those through like a Costco or office supply store. And I believe most of them report to Small Business Exchange, and maybe some to Dun & Bradstreet. Building that business credit is important. Let me dial back to our access to capital. The line of credit is up to $50,000 for businesses that have existed for 2 years or longer. And we also offer a business credit card for startup businesses. I mean, if you've been in business more than 2 years, you can get the business credit card as well. So say, for instance, you were approved for $50,000. You can say, I want $10,000 of that in a business credit card and another $40,000 in a line of credit. A business credit card is great to have. We report both of all our business credit facilities to the Small Business Exchange. That is something that not all financial institutions do. So whoever you bank with, find out. If you have a business credit card, find out if they report to the Small Business Exchange, because then you're building credit through the business Equifax and TransUnion. Now, Dun & Bradstreet, you know, sometimes it gets reported, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on how it flows through the system. But you want to get a Dunn's number, a Dun & Bradstreet number. Create that number, go on the website, apply for it. But it is all about taking your business from a hustle to really structuring your business for success.
And I'd like to kind of say there are 3 levels of trade line accounts. And as a new business, there are level 1 trade line accounts that you can access. That information is easily available for you based on your length of time in business. Everything is contingent upon the length of time in business. Now, that's why we believe a sole proprietorship is the okie doke, because there's no legal classification or filing for the business to timestamp it and say it started this date as a legal entity, and from this day forward, the clock is ticking. And when you get to 1 year, you can access things at 1 year of business, level 1 trade line accounts. When you've been in business 2 years or more, you can get to level 2 trade line accounts. When you've been in business 3 years or more, you get to level 3 trade line accounts and then after you have successfully managed level 3 trade line accounts by paying your bills on time, and on time is 7 days before the due date, paying them successfully, continuously on a consistent basis, you can sit in the bank and ask for cash.
Now we've got one of our sponsors is in the back, and so I'm going to give him the floor in just a second. Mr. Harold Fierce from Aries Transportation. But there's one thing that I want to touch on as a business owner myself. This whole business funding, the education, the credit, All of those things are extremely important. When I first started off in the life insurance business, I know that I'm a good salesman, right? And I've gotten some awards and some plaques and all those different things, but it was very difficult. It's been very difficult to scale. And so just like anything else, you look around and you begin to compare. And I've seen agents that have just come into the business and shot directly to the top. Well, at one point, I ended up purchasing a program that taught me that they were basically coming in, getting a business credit card or a line of credit. They would do a ton of advertising for agents, for recruiting, for purchasing leads, for getting the word out about their business. And they would go from 0 to high 6 figures in the matter of a couple, 2 or 3 years, right? Where a lot of our businesses, I was looking at a statistic that said most Black businesses are bringing in about $74,600 in revenue per year. By the time you actually pay your taxes, now you're looking at 60, high 50s, and that really isn't enough to sustain a household. And so we have so many businesses in the Black community, and although that's encouraging, when we don't have the funding, when we don't have the credit, when we can't access loans, and we can't grow, it really limits and stifles our growth. And so before we go into the next segment here, I want to bring in one of our sponsors and see if we can get them in here.
While you're bringing him in, can I say something really important along with what you said? You said that they start getting marketing in place. As statistics have proven, Black people do not market their business at the level they want. Marketing is an investment, and it is the only revenue driver there is for business. If your business is not making adequate revenue, you have a marketing issue. And if we can invest in marketing, we would close the gap on what we earn versus what our counterparts earn. They understand the power of marketing, and today digital marketing that goes out and brings customers to your business. We do not invest in the only tool that increases revenue, and that's marketing. And we spend a lot of time teaching the principles of marketing so we can demystify it for our community, because social media marketing is not marketing, it's advertising. Right. And you don't need a lot of advertising. You need marketing strategies, campaigns that are tied to advertising that increases revenue. And our community, the education is so critical that we have missed on our journey, that to fill our gaps and give us the ability to run businesses better and more sustainably. So I just had to get that in.
Yeah, I love the language,
Most
the
definitely.
constant reminder of we have to understand the language. We have to understand how it applies. There's a difference between marketing and advertising. Some folks that are joining us today, that probably was an aha moment, but it is very important that we really drill down the education, and you're going to have to hear things probably 10 times before it makes sense. And so that's why the repetitive educational courses that are out there, don't do it just once. You continue with your education, understanding your industry, understanding the ebbs and flows of those industry, because that information is out there.
Yes, absolutely. And so I'm going to take a second to hear from one of our sponsors, Mr. Harold Fierce. He's from Aries Transportation. Can you hear us okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
Listen, so first off, I appreciate you for sponsoring the A.L. Johnson podcast. And he's actually part of why we're here today. He's one of my clients and a good friend of mine. He happens to bank with BMO. And so we started talking about access to capital and funding. And he said, hey, let me introduce you to some people. And in turn, I said, let me introduce you to a few people as well. And so we've been working hard ever since, going to war for the Black business community here in Kansas City. And we've got some very exciting things going on. But Mr. Fierce, if you could just take a second and tell them a little bit about Aries Transportation and what it is that you all do.
Aries Transportation is basically a FedEx contractor. We provide what we call power only. We provide tractors, and we pull FedEx trailers throughout the United States. And Dr. Watson hit on a very important point. And again, like I stumbled into BMO, I stumbled into marketing. And I took the opportunities when I leave Kansas City to make sure I get in front of line haul managers at the different facilities. Just for example, I went to Dallas July 26th through the 28th. I didn't spend a whole lot of time at the conference. I spent most of my time traveling to the line haul facilities. And we got in front of the Dallas people. They called me on Wednesday and told me they needed a truck down there Monday. And could I do it? So I just got back from delivering a truck on Monday. We left Sunday. We drove down, got the truck in place, got the driver in place, and I flew back Monday night. Got up this morning at 4, went to another office here in Brookfield, Missouri. So we've got opportunities in Atlanta because me and one of my managers went to Atlanta. We had an interview for Atlanta on Monday, and we'll possibly get 3 lanes. So Dr. Watson is right. There's a difference between advertising and marketing. And I think some of our business owners miss the point that we're so disconnected by social media. We think we can go to Facebook Marketplace or TikTok and put an ad up there and become a millionaire. You have to go and meet these people. You have to build relationships with these people, and they have to trust you to handle their product. And since in a matter of a week, I'm probably going to in a matter of 45 days, I'm going to have 4 to 5 trucks down in Dallas just off one visit.
Congratulations.
Most
Congratulations.
definitely. Congratulations, Mr. Fierce.
Congratulations.
Now, one thing that we talk about, because we've met with a few banks, and so I really want to commend Mrs. Young for actually coming here and making herself accessible to our audience. Relationship banking is important. That's one thing that we talk about, relationship banking.
Most definitely.
And so, Ms. Young, can you just give us an idea of what the difference is between someone who just goes into a bank branch, they talk to the teller, they do their transactions and walk out, versus a bank that actually builds a relationship and seeks to grow and build with their constituents?
Yeah, relationship banking is what I feel that we do a pretty good job here at BMO, and that relationship requires our bankers to reach out to our customers periodically to see how things are going, and then also for those business customers to reach out to their banker, sometimes just to say hi. These are things that I have going on with my business. We experienced through PPP when nobody knew what was going to happen, and the government was trying to get funding out the door, and banks were really struggling with trying to understand the rules and the regulations for getting this funding out the door. And honestly, it felt like we found out on a Thursday that we needed to get this money out on a Friday or Saturday, and we were really just turning the pages trying to figure out everything. Businesses that had a relationship banker, they had their phone number. They were able to call them directly and say, hey, what do I need to get in place to make sure I can get through this round one? And so the round one group of businesses, I would say mostly had a banking relationship where they could have a conversation. They had a phone number, but we threw a ton of resources behind reaching out to businesses during that time as well. And so that's a relationship bank, someone that reaches out to you. You can reach out to them. You have a phone number where you can call someone, and not necessarily a call center. You have a phone number. And so I encourage everyone on this call, whether you bank at BMO, we would love to have you, but make sure wherever you bank that you know your banker's name and phone number.
Now let's stay there, Ms. Young. Let's stay there because this is important, that relationship with your banker. When a person applies for a loan, everyone doesn't qualify. I mean, we know that, we understand that the program is designed to help more people get qualified, but inevitably there are going to be denials. And so when that happens, what does the education process look like to get them to a position of being fundable? Are they, saying, hey, raise your credit score by this many points, or maybe get an additional trade line here? Or how does that work? What does that denial process look like in getting them back on the right track?
Yeah, we like to say it's not a decline, but it's a no, not yet. And in that no, not yet conversation, it is take a look at your credit and what are those things that are causing your credit to hit what we call a risk bucket that is kind of not in line with the type of.
I believe you cut out for a second.
Algorithm that goes through and look at the behavior. What's the behavior of the borrower? For instance, you can have a 725 score and get declined, and you can have a 690 and get approved. It's what's behind there. Dr. Watson talked about that evolution. Year 1, year 2, year 3. What is happening there? If you're going out getting a whole bunch of inquiries on your credit, but you have a good credit history, it is a red flag, And so you want to understand what your behaviors, what is the story that it's telling the bank when your credit gets pulled. So from a credit standpoint, it's a no, not yet on a decline. And having a conversation. We do partner with other CDFIs like Dream Spring. We partner with them, and we've had some partnership with Justine Peterson, where their underwriting criteria is a little bit more relaxed than BMO. Here in Chicago, one of the CDFIs that we work with, they've been able to do over $300,000 in funding where we could not. So partnerships are important for access to capital. And then we also look at cash flow. Dr. Watson talked about cash flow. I love Dr. Watson going before me because she just lays such a great foundation. Cash flow, we've been able to relax that a little bit to get more funding out the door. Generally, we look at a coverage of 1.25 and throwing ratios out here that folks may not understand, but Dr. Watson sure will make you understand all those ratios. We dropped it down to 1.1. So what that means is that we have allowed you to get more access to capital because we're saying your cash flow requirements is less than what the standard is.
Now, for someone who may be listening and they say, hey, I've got an established business, I'm over 3 years old, I've had a credit line of $50,000 and they're looking to grow beyond that. I know that steps outside of the Black and LatinX program, but what does BMO do for businesses that need to scale beyond that into, the $250,000, $500,000 range? Do you have programs for that as well?
Yeah, we have actually had about 40 businesses that have grown from the $50,000 line of credit to much more than that. Businesses that bought owner-occupied commercial real estate, and so it's been a very good exercise in kind of keeping an eye on these businesses and seeing how they're graduating. So our bankers in the branch, they can go up to 100,000 and taking a look at a credit facility. But we also have business relationship managers that will take on the bigger deals. And so our branches collaborate with those business relationship managers to have that next step conversation. And then when a customer needs more than $1 million, then we, look at our commercial area and say, hey, let's collaborate with this customer. We're operating it like a one client and saying, what stage are you in and what kind of expertise within the bank is required to help you go to that next step.
So let me give the big picture overview here for anyone who's just tuning in. We're talking about bankability and how to fund your business so that it can grow and scale. I'm just going to take a random person in my mind. Let's call him Tim. Tim is getting ready to start a business. He goes to Dr. Donnetta Watson to the Black Mastermind program. He goes through that intensive boot camp where he learns all the numbers and how to project cash flow, et cetera. He gets himself set up as a legitimate business. Within a couple of years, he goes to BMO Bank and visits with Miss Young and the facilities there. Initially, he's able to get anywhere from $0 to $50,000, whether that's a line of credit or a credit card. There are relaxed underwriting requirements for businesses that are 51% minority owned, whether that's Black, Latino, X, or a women owned business. And as that business grows over time, because it is a relationship type environment with BMO, they can actually grow you from that 50K into the millions, depending on the success of your business. Do I have all that correct?
Pretty much so. But one of the things that we do take a look at, we do look at your revenue. So we're not going to, when we do the underwriting, we look at revenues. We're not going to extend more than 30% of your revenue. So you start there and say, what am I doing? What's my revenue number? 30% of that, that's going to be our maximum. And that's kind of a general rule. It may move one day. That's the rule today. So you can start there. So if your business only did 40,000 this year and you need 100,000, probably not going to be able to help you there. But, you know, again, we collaborate with other financial organizations that might take a different look. It's called capital stacking, right? Yeah. So maybe we can get you a $10,000 business credit card, but we work with another organization said, hey, we're going to take a chance and give you another $50,000, $60,000. And maybe there's another organization or investor says, hey, I'm going to take a chance with you. I'm going to give you 100,000. So now you kind of capital stacked. And it's based off of the ability of each of those entities to extend that credit to you.
I'd like to say something which is in alignment with what Ms. Young is saying, because what happens in our community is when we first start our businesses, we are encouraged to start growing. And we're not aware that business has life cycles, that it must go through each of the phases of business. And so when you're in business, 0 to 3 years, you are still a newborn, a startup. And so the first 3 years of business, the activities that you do are strictly all in alignment with you being a newbie startup. The second phase of business is 3 to 5 years of business, where that is called the stabilization period. Those 3 years of business, you are stabilizing what you've created. Now you're ready for cash. Prior to that, you can get trade line accounts and lines of credit, but you will not get cash, and you should not try to overload the business with cash loans, because that's when we're vulnerable those first 3 years. And the likelihood of making the payments, if anything happens to change our revenues and our projections are not on point, we then end up struggling to meet those cash obligations. We've got to pay those payments. We encourage entrepreneurs to pace themselves, to know what season they're in business and what should be happening in the business during these intervals. And now these are the products you should be looking to utilize at this level of business. 5 to 7 years of business, you are in your sustainability period. And that's when you begin to research and strategize for growth. You do not grow 5 to 7 years in business because you're not wise enough in financial matters to implement the strategies of stacking capital, of using joint ventures, using equity opportunities. You don't have enough knowledge. And we often encourage students to come back to class 3 to 5 years of business and learn what's available in the lending world in managing the business, and now looking at acquiring assets to structure and stabilize the business, and how to acquire assets in that 5 to 7 year period. And now years 7 to 10, you are in growth mode. That's when millionaires are birthed. 7 to 10 years of business, you're in growth. You've done sustainability, you've done your research, you've identified opportunities, you identified new products, new services, growth strategies. You're not implementing them, you're identifying them and laying out the plan and identifying the cost for growth, and then accessing capital, not revenue, accessing capital to grow. When we enter into growth mode, using capital, we're not bleeding business model A to support business B, C, and D. That's when our businesses predominantly start to close. If we start out right, we start growing too soon and we begin to not be able to handle, because growth is the most expensive time of business. You have your regular operating expenses, and now you have your growth engagements and all of those activities compounding your cost of operations. And when we don't grow correctly, we end up killing business model A, trying to operate C product or business model B, C, and D. So we discourage
Dr. Watson
from growing too fast.
Great. We got a comment from our LinkedIn audience. I believe this is for Ms. Harper-Young. Just really quick, what they were wanting to know is different businesses. Like, does it depend on the type of business that you have? If all revenues are equal, does it depend on what type of business you have, whether you get funded or not? Are there any businesses that are harder to fund or some that are easier?
Yeah.
All revenues are not equal.
Great question. And really what that is an industry question. You know, I'm in a certain industry, you know, am I likely to not get funded? Well, that could be the case if you're in an industry that is on the downturn. Okay. Yes. So I used an example not too long ago about people being in the pandemic. If you were dry cleaners, you were a high risk industry because what? All the downtown was closed. Everybody was on virtual. Nobody was wearing clothes that they needed to take to the cleaners, right? So a dry cleaners in that phase became a high risk industry. Okay. And there's ebbs and flows of when an industry can be high risk based on the economic conditions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for answering that. Mr. Pierce, you got a comment?
Yes. What I learn every time I talk to Dr. Watson and I talk to Ms. Harper-Young, I learn how inept I am at being a businessman and how much that I don't know, because I've managed to grow my business and be successful on the outside. And you know what? It's predominantly for two reasons. One, I'm lucky, and two, I'm blessed. So hearing these conversations, what I, in my humble opinion, when businesses come in to banks, and even if they are funded or they don't fund it, one of the bank requirements to get funding should be is that they go to a outfit like Dr. Watson's and get educated. Because even though even my projections for this year are 6 million, the education I don't have. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've just been able to stumble in and make some decent decisions and hire some good people. And I've even admitted to Dr. Watson, I don't know my numbers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I've been out and in my, I've been out marketing and it's working for me. But now in hindsight, I think I should have been at her class.
It's not too late.
Yeah. Well, I know you started your 8-week session. But
it starts August 1st, so it's not too late.
August 1st,
because I want to tell you, we train millionaires.
Yeah.
We train millionaires. I have millionaires that come to me and say, I've never done the back end of my business. I started the business and the business started making money. And I started following the money. And I never learned how to look at my own business analytically, critically, and with an eye to know when and where I need to put my focus. And the numbers tell the story. And when the numbers are telling us a story, we have to believe the story and follow the story. And without having a real good grasp of what the numbers are saying, yes, you've got insight and you've got the Holy Spirit guiding you, but there'll come a time you're going to need to know what those numbers are telling you. And you need to be able to analyze from your financial reports what decision to make next. And so we teach millionaires who have been blessed immensely by what they have been doing, but because they don't have a grasp on it, it makes them very vulnerable and insecure. And therefore, they can't maximize the opportunities that are in front of them because of lack of knowledge, the insecurity that they don't have a real good grasp. And that also makes you vulnerable at certain levels for people. You know, a thief always appears when there's an opportunity.
All right.
And
may
when
I say something?
Know how to manage your numbers, a thief will appear.
May I say something to that, Mr. Johnson? With
yes, please.
I think that all of this holds true. I think my purpose in being here today is to be somewhat of a glue, because all of these opportunities that we have spoken about this evening can only happen if those that want to be involved deprogram in order to reprogram. You have to want to get this knowledge. And so when you walk into that bank, regardless of how you thought the process should go, you have to flush that. You have to lose that in hindsight of saying that, okay, let me start fresh. Let me get rid of any bad habits or any bad thoughts that I had in order to be able to take those steps. That, and I think that then we'll have even more millionaires. We'll have even more small Black owned and Latino and women businesses if we can just make sure that we are coming together collectively. And we've all spoken about that with the BMOs and with the Black Mastermind groups and with the Mr. Harold Fears and the A.L. Johnsons and the Michael Johnsons. And in order to do the purpose of doing that is so that we can show collectively that this is how we get these things done. And then we can fast track these people, because now they got it, because they don't have such as much of a burden as thinking that they knew something that they didn't know anything about, and being able to go in confidently and saying that, hey, now I do have the knowledge. So I think it does take also the likes of Prospect Business Association with Simone Curls and We Development Credit Union and BMO and Black Mastermind Group, for all of us to come together collectively, get all of the no's out of the way so that we can prosper and move forward to grow our ecosystem collectively from here, from Missouri throughout Kansas. And I think that this is the core of what is needed. This is a cornucopia of knowledge that can be presented to our people, but presented to them and meeting them where they are, but saying that, hey, we're going to deprogram you first.
Yes.
We don't want you to come in with any bad habits or anything when you go into these financial establishments. We want you well prepared and well versed in what it is that you need to know, so that you can feel not only that you know that you're invested in it, that you're going to come out with a good outcome. And as Sister Young has stated, that it's not a decline. It's just not right now. We're gonna work on it. But if we also have everything in place, every resource readily available for everybody that has committed themselves to saying, I don't know how this works, please teach me how this works, we'll be more suitable to move forward, to make sure that we are more sustained as an ecosystem. So the process of deprogramming in order to reprogram, I think, should be at the forefront of everything that we're doing, because everything that I've heard totally makes sense. And I'm very, very excited to be a part of this podcast. And because not only, as Sister Young said, when Dr. Watson speaks, not only, I mean, it's fuel for the mind. And so it's a learning process as we go. And so it's good for me. And what it does is it lets me know that I have deprogrammed myself in order to take on this new information. And I think that is very, very important for us moving forward, is that we have our people collectively, all our constituents collectively together on the same wavelength, saying that, hey, we get it now.
I
We
love
spend
it. I
an
love it.
hour.
Before we do that, there's a couple shout outs that I have to give here. There's a ton of comments. They've been coming in so fast I haven't even been able to put them up. Daryl Johnson, Business Credit Works. I believe he was actually one of your students at one point, or he was a part of the mastermind group, Ms. Watson. He's left a couple comments here. Cerise Hall, if you are not familiar with her, she goes from Atlanta to Kansas City. She works with government, the youth, a brilliant mind, absolutely brilliant mind. Thank you for tuning in. We've got Dinner and Dialogue. He's Andrew Boykin. He's also the founder of The Restoration, which is a 501c3 that is designed to help actually eliminate a lot of the situations and programming that we're talking about today. Thank all of you for tuning in. For our YouTube, our Facebook, our LinkedIn audience, we thank all of you for tuning in. I've got a quick question for you, Representative Johnson, and we've got to get ready to wrap up here soon. But this is such a great conversation. At the beginning, I talked about the tax revenue being something that really kind of starts with the businesses that are in a community, and it trickles down from there to an extent. When you hear this type of conversation and you see the pieces of the puzzle coming together, from a government perspective, as a state representative, how excited are you to hear that there actually is a Donnetta Watson, a Black Mastermind group that can actually teach people in your community, that you oversee, how to create these sustainable, scalable businesses? And then to know that we have Ms. Young with BMO, who has created a program specifically for our community. We have Mr. Fears, who has a successful business, and he's not only interested in growing his own business, but he cares about the business community as a whole and is a big advocate. And so, how does that feel to you as someone who represents Kansas City?
Let me tell you, AL, man, I'm elated. I am elated to have an opportunity just to be involved with such a great group of individuals that already have a pathway and have avenues and have resources and tools in their toolbox readily available for our Black, Browns, and our women, in order to make sure that we do have a place that will keep us here within our own communities, not to be driven out due to taxation, but to say that, hey, we're business owners in this community as well. So we have a right not only to be here, but to help empower our communities as well through workforce development, through apprenticeship programs, through vocational training, anything that makes sure that we know who we are, that we know where to go when we need resources, because half of it is the leveraging. Just as Sister Young had spoke, she stated that, the information is there, it just wasn't leveraged correctly. Now, as people say, a lot of us are becoming quote unquote woke. And so if we can continue this, I look at our future being bright. I look 10 years from now, seeing some of those young masterminds that got it and ran with it, being some of those leaders that we need within our communities. And not only would they be leaders in our communities, they'll also have an opportunity to lead as opposed to being a boss. A boss can delegate. A leader will show you how to lead, and put you in a position to lead. So I just picture this real quick, AL. Picture a young group of newlyweds, right, in a new development, right? And they all have great paying jobs. Some have went on to further their education, and some had apprenticeship and vocational training and worked at those manufacturing facilities that Dr. Watson spoke of that dismantled and destroyed Detroit and other states as well. So we have to get back to that. Missouri is third in IT. And if we can sit that high, I'm sure that Kansas is either right there or even above. It means that we have an opportunity collectively to be able to make a difference in our lives. We don't necessarily always have to go abroad or go out of state to school. We can further our education here. We can pick up on those manufacturing jobs that will be coming back into our states, and we can make a great living. Picture those families saying, hey, at an HOA meeting, there's a warehouse a mile down the street, and we all have excellent credit and business credit. Let's say we collectively go down there together and leverage the money that we got from one financial establishment and some from over here at another one. And then we got with the likes of Mr. Fears and with Dr. Watson. And now let's go get that building. And now let's empower and train our own children and our own relatives and our own people on how to be business owners. And I think that that's what's needed. And I think that we are a core, and we have a cornucopia of knowledge right here amongst us that we can get this thing done on both sides of the state.
Yeah, I'll tell you all, for those of you that are tuning in, all of us here on this panel, we all talk individually and collectively about these issues, and we're doing the best that we can to find ways to collaborate and, just bring some solutions to the community. And so that's extremely important to all of us. We do have to get ready to wrap this up. I wish we could continue on, but there's one way that I always like to end the show. Usually it's 3 wishes, but I'm going to knock it down to 1 for the sake of time. And so I'd just like you all to go around. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Fears, again. He's one of our sponsors with Aries Transportation. Mr. Fears, if you had one wish for the Black business community and it would 100% be granted, what would that wish be?
My one wish is that I can find a way to push the Black Mastermind program out to all minority women, Latinx business owners. I wish we weren't, I call it stumble. My wish it would be a direct path. When they walked in the bank, they said yay or nay, but you need to go to this program. This is part of the requirements for funding. It shouldn't be happenstance. It should be a direction. That's my wish.
I love it. I appreciate that. Representative Johnson.
My wish would be that that we grow these type of conversations and have the resources readily available and the information readily available at all times for all of our constituents, so no one is left in the dark, so that we all have an opportunity to sit at that table, so that we all have an opportunity to go into these financial establishments and come out with what it is that we're needed to go back and be able to feed our families, to grow our business, to empower other families, and to have this be our ecosystem that is perpetual. It never stops, and we only continue to grow it. For us to be, there were several Black Wall Streets, and for us to all have one in every state and across the world.
I love that. I love that. Usually it's ladies first, and no disrespect, gentlemen, but I wanted to save the best for last on this one. And so, Mr. Young, what is your one wish for the Black business community?
To tap into the greatness. Your businesses, they start because they see a need. They're trying to solve a problem. And so we have that. And so tap into that greatness and leverage the educational tools that are out there and available. Mm-hmm. Banks really want to lend. That's the truth. We do want to lend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And while I have you there, can you just go ahead and give them a little information on how they can connect with BMO and the Black LatinX program?
You can reach out to me directly at 312-402-2722. And I will provide you with some information and some connections, and we can go from there.
All right. If you didn't catch that, just hit the rewind. It's right there for you. Dr. Watson, your one wish for the Black business community.
I'm stuck here saying, oh gosh, one wish. More than anything, I want the Black business community to know that everything and anything is possible. If we're willing to allow ourselves to be educated, to allow ourselves to be trained, to humble ourselves, to allow someone to mentor us, to coach us, to lead us, to guide us. That's the epitome of what our success could possibly look like. If we could really grab a hold that we really need to be educated, trained, coached, and mentored on this journey towards success. But it is obtainable to each and every one of us with the right.
Dr. Watson, yeah. And please leave your contact information.
Yes, they can reach us by calling 913-371-0302. That's our Entrepreneur Resource and Training Center in Kansas City, Kansas, which by the end of this year, we will evolve to the Mogword Business and Technology Center, which will house retail businesses, which will house service businesses, which will have our mall, we'll have our technology training centers. It's going to be an amazing thing for Kansas City. And so we are positioning ourselves to meet our entrepreneurs right where they're at and walk them to the next level of success, one Black business at a time.
Love it. I'm going to go back to my mem just for 1 second as we close. There's going to be an election coming up next year, 2024. I do have a radio show on 1590 AM. I don't really post a whole lot about it online. It's Wednesdays from 1:30 to 2:30. And so, definitely consider checking that out. But I can't say certain things on the radio that I can say on my own podcast. So that's what ownership and control is about. But when it comes to your vote, it's important that you consider voting for the people who are willing to connect directly with the community. There are a lot of people in office that you never see, you never hear from, you just see photo ops. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, Representative Mike Johnson is someone who definitely cares about our community. I've never tried to get him involved with anything, and he just shrugged it off. He always makes time, he makes room, he creates the capacity for things that he knows are important to us in our community. And so just consider those things when you go to the ballot. It's extremely important. And every time that we cast a vote, we cannot be upset with what we come up with if we're not a part of the process. And we can't just vote for names because they're popular or they're endorsed by this or that. We have to actually look at the fruit. And this man does provide the fruit. And so, State Representative Johnson, for anyone that wants to contact you, I know that you have an open door policy. How can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can contact me at Michael Johnson at mohouse.gov, or they can also contact me at mjkcmo23@gmail.com. And I think that I have an open door policy. And I think that I just want to say this real quick, Mr. Johnson. I think every month, every individual, all of us, as well as everybody that is tuned in, should make a conscious effort to go and meet with at least 5 to 10 individuals that they do not know that they need to know. And I think that that will help build rapport and the relationships that are needed across the board to widen your bandwidth and to make sure that you are accessible and you also have the relationships that are needed to further your business and continue to grow your business.
I agree. Everything that we want is in the hands of another person, whether that's right, money, protection, friendship, whatever it is, it's going to be with another person. So we definitely need to come together and be better connected. Daryl Johnson, he left a comment. Daryl Johnson, again, that's Business Credit Works. Check him out. He helps people with business funding as well. He said another Johnson, and none of us are related, so it's just a popular last name. Mr. Fears, I got to brag on this brother for a minute, just really quick before we go. This man has been a gem, absolute gem. He is a hard-working man, one of the hardest working men I know. He knows how to work a room like none other. We've gone out and done some networking together. He's all about shaking hands, creating relationships, meaningful relationships. I definitely want to commend him for what he's doing. He's working on bringing a trucking school to Wyandotte County. He's working on a prison to employment program in the trucking industry. He has men who are coming, into his business and just walking into, 50 to 75,000 plus per year. And so he's creating not just employment, but family sustaining employment. And so I want to commend him as well. Mr. Fierce, can you just please leave your contact information one last time?
I can be contacted at 913-526-1126. That's 913-526-1126.
Awesome. Listen, I want to thank all of you again. We'll have to do this again at some point in time. And just for those of you that are watching, when you see this, we are actually working on some in-person events. And so stay tuned. Be looking out for that. In the meantime, I do want you to visit aljohnsonlifeinsurance.com. You can click on any page on the website, scroll to the bottom, and I'd like for you to subscribe to our newsletter. The newsletter is actually going to have the replay of this podcast along with some other great information. And I'll also put in the contact information of these individuals so that you can connect with them as well. But again, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.